Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Weekly D. And today I have the amazing Michelle Shimmy joining me. Myself and Michelle, we talk about all things business. We talk about all of the amazing businesses that she has started since her pole journey, starting with PDA, her world famous studio, all the way down to things like her new hand grip and an upcoming project, which you'll get an exclusive sneak peek into. So, this is your weekly D, because honey, if you ain't getting your D on the daily, you should at least be getting it once on the weekly.
Weekly tea. If you're not getting any and you want some tea, then come and join Dan up on the weekly tea. It's the weekly tea.
Hey Shim, thanks so much for coming onto my podcast. It's good to have you on here. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Dan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm awesome. I want to get this podcast started straight away with one of the questions that you get asked all the time, and I thought I'm just going to avoid this right now and just get it right out of the way. Are you and Maddie
These
Sparkle
are really
sisters?
sisters.
You knew it was coming.
Yes, we are. We're really sisters. I mean, I think people get confused because I'm known as Michelle Shimmy and she's known as Maddie Sparkle, but they're not our real names.
I know. And people are like, yeah, but her last name isn't Shimmy, so they can't be related.
No. So they're our pole dancer names, like our stage names, I guess. So in Australia, it's kind of a pole dancing tradition that, well, it was when we started, that when you start competing, you have a stage name. And I had my first amateur competition and I was about to go on stage and Maxie Shields said to me, "What's your stage name?" And I couldn't think of anything because I didn't have one. And I just said Shimmy because my sister, her nickname for me was Shamel. So instead of Michelle, she turned it around, Shamel. And then she used to call me Shim and Shimmy. And so I was just like, all right, that can be my stage name, Shimmy. And so then I started competing under the name Shimmy. And Maddie, she didn't have a stage name at all. And then when we went to LA for the first ever pole, what was it called? It wasn't PoleCon, it was something else then.
Pole Expo?
No, like the original one. Nah, I can't remember, but it was in LA. Anyway, we went and met my friend Crystal, and her kid watched a TV show over there that the characters were called Shimmer, Sparkle, and something else. And so it was Crystal Gibson's little kid, who was like 3 years old at the time, that called Maddie Sparkle. And then that's just it. That's all it is. But we are sisters.
That's so funny. But people ask you this question all the time, right?
Yeah, all the time.
It must get so boring and annoying. So I'm going to ask the last boring and annoying question. How tall are you?
I am 168 centimeters tall when I'm not wearing my watch.
So I want to know that so I feel like I'm kind of like, when you feel like you're kind of in on the joke, but you're not really on the joke. Why? Because obviously Daddy Birdie and obviously Maddie, they all like do that whenever you're on live. What's that?
Dirty Bird is not our real sister.
Right, yeah. Just everyone, just in case you're wondering, Daddy Birdie is not related to them. But like, so who is it that keeps asking how tall you are? Is that just like a creepy guys thing?
It's just always these weird dudes on Dirty Birdie's Instagram that ask her how tall she is. And so we just heckle her. I don't know. We just heckle each other all the time. Sometimes I worry that people think like that I'm genuinely trolling her. But some of the things that I post on her Instagram. But no, we just heckle each other. And like in real life, we're the same. It's just, I don't know. It's stupid.
No, I love it. I think it's really obvious that you're not trolling each other. I think it's hilarious watching you through. That's why I always log into your lives, because I always want to see you all trolling each other on the lives, because I find it hilarious.
Yeah, Dirty Birdie gets really upset when Maddie and I post makeup tips, because Dirty Birdie is actually like legit really good at makeup, and it hurts her soul when we do our tutorials.
Daddy Birdie, like Deeps is like proper into her like bodybuilding posing at the moment. She's like looking amazing. She looks crazy, like ripped at the moment.
Yeah, she
that
is.
Bitch.
Just trains all day.
I know. She's just, what a life. I'd love to live Dirty Birdie's life. I actually said that to her last time I
She
saw
trains
her.
all the time. I don't have the energy for that.
So tell us where it all started, Shim. It started with corporate law, right? So would you ever go back to corporate law? Is that an industry that you would ever go back to?
No, definitely not. I think looking back on it, I think I was very much a square peg in a round hole in corporate law. It just wasn't for me. I think I was trying, like, I had an idea of what I thought my career was going to be. Well, actually, I wanted to do international law, and I did like an internship at the UN in the Hague in the Netherlands, and I wanted to do that, but then I came back and my mum was sick, and so I ended up staying in Sydney, and I got a job at a corporate law firm, and I just kind of got not stuck there, but it was a good job and it was a really good firm, and I was like, well, I guess this is it. But it was really not for me. And I remember at one point thinking I got like upgraded to the office with the view. So in Sydney, all the big law firms have got harbour views, and before I'd been on like on the internal office side, and then I got my office with a view. And I was like, oh, this is nice. And then I thought, well, where to from here? And it was just the corner office. So just one a few up. And I was like, God, if I stay here, I'll literally spend like the majority of my life in this office. And I just thought that was like really not for me, quite a depressing thought. So,
Right.
yeah, one thing kind of led to another. I wasn't very happy there. It was too, just wasn't for me. And then I was like, fuck it, gonna open a pole studio.
Right. Fair enough. So you started learning pole while you were at the law firm, or were you still at uni learning law at the time that you
No,
started
I
pole?
just finished uni and I'd just come back. I'd done my internship and I'd just come back from The Hague, and I had some time to kill before I started the graduate position. And Maddie said to me, do you want to go and do a pole dancing class? And I said to her, no, that sounds so stupid. Why would I want to do that? And she talked me into it. And I went along, and literally from my first class, I was like, oh my God, I love this. I absolutely want to continue. And so Maddie and I continued, but then she went overseas for a bit and she sort of stopped pole dancing, and I kept going. And then when she came back, I was like, Maddie, we're opening a studio together. And she had nothing much else to do at that point. And she just said, okay. And originally, kind of the idea was that Maddie would be more admin side, because she was a bit behind on the pole dancing, but she kind of caught up. So
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, my God, she has caught up. Does it feel really annoying now that because obviously you've had a baby, you've had to take a little bit of a step back, and you're like watching her do all these crazy moves, you're like that bitch.
no, I'm just proud of her. Like, she honestly, I always tell people as well, like, Maddie wasn't flexible when we started doing pole. She couldn't do the
Mm,
splits, couldn't touch her toes, all of that. Couldn't sit up straight in a straddle, and that she has just worked and worked, and it's absolutely incredible. I know people would look at her and be like, she's naturally flexible, but honestly, I promise
right.
you, she wasn't. Everything that she's able to do, she has worked so hard for over over a decade now, and she really is like proof that if you just put your mind to it and become completely obsessed and do nothing else, you will achieve
Yeah. Well, it's like I think lots of people assume that Anastasia Skuktarova
it.
was
Mhm.
naturally flexible, and actually she always posts her before and after picture of her eagle, and she
Mm,
wasn't naturally flexible at all. Like,
yeah.
so
I
it
mean, I
is
think
inspiring.
definitely it depends on your body as well. Like, if you have it in you, then hard work will bring it out. But I think, like, yeah, a lot of the time people just give up when they see someone who's extremely flexible and think, oh, I'll never get to that. But, I mean, I also, same with me, I couldn't touch my toes before I started pole dancing. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't have splits or anything like that. Same as you. I, I probably might have been able to touch my toes, but yeah. So it took ages, and I was really bad as well. I kind of got really close on one side, so then I just focused on that one leg, and then the teachers were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you should
That
probably
was
do
back in the
both."
day.
I was like, "Oh
No, that was
yeah."
back in the day when it was like, what other side?
I'm so grateful now to be able to teach students. Like, I'm like, listen, don't do what I did, because I started with one side, and then I realized that actually, when I did this move, I needed this split. And actually, I
Yeah,
then had to try and learn the move on the other side, which sucks because I could have just easily done it on the side that I wanted and got the split that I wanted. So it's so much better to do both sides, and it's so much better for your body, of course. But yeah,
definitely.
so you you did a year degree in France, and then you learned to speak French there, and then you deferred university for a semester and spent time in Italy where you learned Italian, right? Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I did my research. I did my research.
No, just why
Um,
would you even find this?
my question is, can you speak the languages still,
Yes.
like fluently?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I mean, like,
amazing.
it's been a while, but no, I can still, yeah, I can still speak
And do
French.
you
It's funny because I studied French because I wanted to work at the UN, but like when I went to work at the UN um, on the internship, everyone just spoke English. So really, it's just pole dancing and teaching pole in France where it's come in handy being able to speak French.
yeah. So when you go to like France or when you see people like Doris, you know, or even Yvonne Smink now, can you would speak to them in French?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
When I'm
amazing.
teaching my workshops, it's kind of like a bit of a mix because a lot of the moves, they just say the English word with a French accent. And also sometimes I'll be, if I'm teaching something and I can't remember the word for a particular body part, I'll just say it in English and
And they know what
people
you're talking
understand.
about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
not
But like
fluent, but you can have a pretty decent
I'm not
conversation.
like a native speaker, but yeah, yeah, no, I can have proper conversations
Okay,
in
nice.
French.
But do
Yeah.
you have the do you have like the Australian twang? Are you like voulez-vous coucher avec moi? Kind of, or is it
Si
no?
tu veux, je peux parler en français un petit peu, comme ça tu peux demander aux gens si je parle avec un bon accent ou pas. Je sais pas. Ça fait longtemps que je n'ai pas parlé beaucoup français.
Oh wow, I'm actually quite turned on. That was amazing. So what did you just say?
I said, if you want, I can say something in French for you, and you can ask people if I have a good accent or not.
Okay, well, people, you need to message me if you are French and tell me if it was a good accent or not, because it
No,
sounded
it's
great to
terrible
me.
to post it publicly. I'm embarrassed. No, when I lived in France, I could speak it better. It's been a while. Like, I
Yeah,
don't really speak it much.
yeah, fair enough. So
Only to my elderly neighbor who I used to live next door to in Bondi Beach. She's French, and we speak on the telephone sometimes.
So, you just recently did Pole Icon, and I wanted to talk to you about it because you made a post about Pole Icon. It literally looked like the most amazing event. Chile, congratulations on what looked like an amazing event.
It really
Um,
was.
and it was, by the way, I'm just going to say it was Chile and someone else, and I don't know their name, but it wasn't just Chile on her own, but credit to her as well. Both of you did an amazing job by the looks of it, and I hope one day I can come and watch. But
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
you made a post saying that you wanted to drop out and you didn't like the pressure of being called an icon. Now, I can kind of relate to this because obviously, when you're, and I hate this term, but obviously, we are technically classed as pole celebrities, people that teach workshops, you know, people look up to us, we've got large followings. Um, I also feel that pressure to look a certain way, to be able to do certain things. So, is that how it kind of felt for you at this competition? Did you feel like,
No, it wasn't really that. It was more that I've had, obviously got a small baby at home, but
mm-hmm,
there was just a sequence of events this year in my personal life that meant that I just wasn't able, and because I moved up to the Blue Mountains and I was teaching. I went back to teaching, but then my mum, who looks after Charlie for me, she had to have a surgery, and it's just like a bunch of things that made it impossible for me to continue teaching in Sydney because it's like an hour to drive down to Sydney,
right?
a bit more than an hour. And so by the time Pole Icon rolled around, I literally just hadn't really touched a pole in like 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Like I have a pole at home, so occasionally I would do like a little freestyle, but I just, she's very, my dearest darling Charlie, who I love more than anything, is extremely active and very, very, like I just can't. she doesn't sit still. So I can't like put her on the floor and then just go and train. Like I put her on the ground and then next minute she's up on the piano or she's like climbing the bookshelf or something like that. Like she's
Honestly,
just
your
a mad
stories, I'm
baby.
like, oh my God, where
You
does she
should see
get
what
this
she's going
energy
post.
from? Where does she get the energy from? I'm like,
The
oh
other
my
day
God.
she was in the living room and I went to the bathroom and I started to run her bath and I came back and she had somehow she pulled the high chair over to the kitchen counter, climbed up onto the kitchen counter and was standing next to the sink eating an apple, watching Bluey on TV. And I'm like,
I love her. I just love that
yeah, I
though.
love her too.
But she's
But
just,
I had
she's such a free
I just hadn't
spirit.
been. Yeah, she is. She's and I should probably have a bit more discipline, but I just find her so hilarious and I, yeah, love her to pieces. But yeah, I hadn't been training and like I don't feel bad about that because I think, I've been in this industry professionally since 2009 and I think that it's fine to take some time for your personal life and to do things that, want to have a family. It has to happen sometime. I'm not like here to prove anything, but I just felt like I like to put on a good show and I like to put on something that entertains people. And I felt like I hadn't been able to put enough preparation into it.
Yeah.
But then it was actually, I was on the phone to my sister and I was complaining, being like, oh, I don't want to do it. Like, I just don't, I'm not ready. Like, I don't have the time. I'm so tired all the time because Charlie wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I haven't trained. And Maddie said, you've been training for over 10 years. You'll be fine. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
and then I kind of thought, well, I guess that is what this show is all about. I mean, I have never claimed to be, like the most incredible tricks. I've got a few tricks up my sleeves, but I'm not like, I'm not fonging from pole to pole or anything like that. So if people are wanting to see me on stage, then it's because they know that I like to put on a show and I like to entertain.
Hmm.
And, can still do that. So the show that we did was very, very last minute because it just was. But I think it gave everybody a good laugh and it was just fun. I had a
Well,
great time doing it.
but that's what it's about. It's just about having fun. But the thing is, right, is that do you do you feel that pressure because of the person that, like you said, I didn't have enough time to prepare and I like to give people a good show, but you're a completely different person now. Do you know what I mean? Like you've had a child for God's sake. Like I feel like it's so
Mm.
hard to the Michelle Shimmy that was putting on these massive shows back then didn't have a toddler running around. So it's so much different. Obviously, as a professional poler, you must put so much pressure on yourself to be like, yeah, but I always put on amazing shows. But that is not the person you are now. You're so different. Like, does your life just
Mm.
feel so much different now that you've got a child and you're married?
Yes.
It must
Yeah.
just
It
be
feels so
so
different. Like
different.
sometimes when I'm like, getting yogurt out of her hair or like, stopping her from eating dog food or unsuccessfully stopping her from eating dog food or like, trying to get her out of the cupboard where she's like climbed in, when I'm like just doing weird things with this like crazy, irrational little human. And I stop and think like, I used to travel the world performing and teaching.
Oh, but it's
How different, but I wouldn't change it. Like I
no.
did all of that. And it was amazing. And this is even more amazing.
But would you not
Not
agree
everyone is cut
that
out for motherhood, but for me, I think like I didn't even understand before how much I would love being a mum, and
yeah.
she's my everything.
Would you not agree though that like you said, oh, I used to travel the world. I get asked this a lot. People are like, you're so lucky. You get to travel the world. You get to do this. I'm like, it sounds so much glamorous, more glamorous than it actually is. Like, because I
Yeah,
fly in, I get taken to my hotel, I get picked up the next morning, I teach all day, I go back to my hotel, I sleep because I'm so fucking tired. I then wake up again the next day. And obviously, I'm in a country, I need to make the most of my time and make as much money as I can. And they're like, do you want to stay
say
behind
anything.
and look at the sights or anything? And I'm like, I don't really have time because I've got to get back home. I've got a studio back home. It's
Yeah.
so different to what people think it
Well,
is.
imagine if you were traveling from Australia.
Right. Honestly, I don't know how you both do it. When I see you guys come and do mini tours and stuff from Australia, I just think, wow, like that is
Yeah, like
insane. I
the
just
jet
couldn't do it.
lag. The jet lag is an absolute killer. And then also because of the cost of the flights, you have to work for a week or something just to pay off the flights.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely like I loved it. I got to see, I take huge pride in the fact that I've pole danced on every continent on the earth except for Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like saw so many incredible places and met so many amazing people, and it was wonderful. But towards the end, and I'm not going to say end as in I've finished touring, but towards before COVID, like getting to that point before I had the baby and before everything got shut down anyway, I was kind of at the point where I was like, I'm tired of being jet lagged. I don't really get to kind of be present in my friends' lives because I'm always away. There was at one point I was away for like 6 months of the year, and it takes its toll. Like it's hard to build a life here, like to have a home life.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of was ready for something different.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And so obviously one of the things I wanted to talk to you about on the podcast today was about your businesses, because obviously I love running my businesses and I am like very proud of what I've achieved in my businesses. However, you are just like dominating when it comes to business. And before we talk about your different businesses that you've started and kind of where they grew from, I just want to know, where does that entrepreneurial spirit come from? Do you have someone in your family who is entrepreneurial also, like someone maybe your mum or dad who is like has their own businesses? Anyone like that?
No. So everything that we've done has 100% been through trial and error.
Right.
And if I could go back in time to when we first opened the studio and I think about this all the time, and take the knowledge and the attitude and the approach that I have now, if I could take it back to the beginning, I just think, oh my God, I would be so much better off now.
Oh my God, right. You'd be so rich. Can you imagine?
Yes.
But it's part of the journey
It's
though, isn't
really,
it?
it is part of the journey. And the thing is as well that when I first started, when I first decided that I wanted to open a studio, and Maddie and I were like getting all excited for it, we didn't really approach it from the perspective that we wanted to be able to pay ourselves a proper salary, and we didn't really kind of hope that we would one day be able to make enough money to buy a house, like all the normal things that you hope for with a job.
Right.
We were just like, we love pole, we're crazy about pole, so long as we can pay the rent and have a space to train, doesn't matter if we need to work other jobs. And we worked other jobs for like the first 2 years when we originally opened Pole Dance Academy. We worked crazy hard, but not very efficiently in terms of growing the business.
Right.
We were just training. We were like constantly at the studio. It was a lot of hard work, but we loved it. Like we absolutely loved it. And I wouldn't really take it back because it was part of the journey. And it was only like a few years in that I sort of thought like, no, this is our career now, and we should be able to pay ourselves properly.
Yeah.
And we should be looking at like growth and how to do better from these businesses. And then that's when everything started to
George, that's George opening the squeakiest door in the background, the squeakiest door ever.
Just go away.
Just sit still, George.
Just sit still. Anyway, yeah. So once we kind of like had that shift in perspective, that's when everything changed for us, and the businesses started doing really well. And then we started like doing other things as well and expanding into other ventures. Like we've got No Sweat and Shimmy and Sparkle, and building, the competitions, Pole Theatre and Dance Filthy. And this is kind of has been top secret, but I feel...
Oh, go on. I need to know now. No, you can't do that. You can't say that and not say it. So come on, tell us.
Well, we haven't announced it publicly, but we're actually about to franchise Pole Dance Academy, which is something that I've wanted to do for a really, really long time. But I didn't want to do it until I felt like we were in a really solid position to be able to give something of value to anyone who wanted to come on board. So people have asked many times over the years, like, do you franchise, blah, blah, blah. And we didn't want to because I felt like we was, I guess, not like imposter syndrome, but a little bit like that. Like I felt like we didn't really have the systems in place
to manage it.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to wait until we're at the point, and then now I feel like we've been there for a couple of years, so now I'm like, okay, ready to
Let's
go.
do
So
this.
yeah, and I'm really excited about it because, obviously it's exciting to take on a new venture, but also I think about my little self in 2009 and Maddie, and if I could have met me and Maddie from 2022 and had been given some advice about how to do this, we would have been a lot better off.
Right.
So, if there are any like little Maddies and Shimmies out there that that are wanting to open a studio and don't want to kind of spend 10 years of trial and error, but want to kind of go at it like a business, then, we're here for you. Like,
And
I
where's the
kind of
first one going to be? Do you know where the first one's going to be already, or are you're going to open it up to anyone?
can't say. Yeah, we're opening it up to anyone, but it's like, they have to apply and be approved and everything. But
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, so you don't have anyone who's applied and they're going to be opening the first
No, we
one
do.
soon or
We
anything?
do.
Oh, you do,
Yeah,
but
we
you
do
can't
that.
say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I feel like we've already gotten quite an exclusive there anyway. So,
You have
can
to.
you? Is it in Australia or is it outside of Australia?
In Australia, yes.
Oh, it is in Australia. Okay, cool. And are you going to open it up to people outside of Australia too?
I think so. I really want to. I'm not definitely wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but if because I perform on stage with minimal preparation for
Yeah,
pole icon and stuff like that. But I'm not a perfectionist, and in fact, I think that being a perfectionist actually hinders you in business. But I do want to get it right and make sure that we roll it out. Like I don't want to just kind of throw it out there, and
hmm.
I want to make sure that everything that we do is quality and is well done. So we're going to kind of like do the first one and then learn some lessons from that and then move forward from that. But I would definitely love to, if there's people overseas who are interested in having a pole dance academy.
So,
Because it's not for me, it's not just, about expanding business or anything like that. It's also like the kind of mentoring side
yeah,
of, because it's very difficult when you set up a lot of people who open a studio don't have a background in business because it is for most people, like it was for me and Mandy, a passion project to start with. You're like, I just love pole dancing. I just want to create my own space. And it's a bit of a mindset shift to be like, yes, you love this, but you don't have to have that starving artist mentality.
right.
You can and you deserve to be compensated for all of your hard work. And it's crazy when you think about it, how much of our industry is kind of in that mindset of I'll work for free
Right.
if I because I love it so much. And that's the beautiful thing about it as well, is that people come with all of their energy and their enthusiasm, and they will. I've worked for free in the pole industry, and lots of people do all the time. But at the end of the day, if you're doing something for free, you need to make sure that it's not the only thing that you're doing. Like
Of course.
you need to live.
We've got bills to pay. It's so funny.
Exactly.
Where do you think that comes from? Why do you think it's such a taboo for people to, oh, what's the best way to word this? Like, you obviously do very well. You've got lots of businesses. You probably make great money from it. Same for me. I've got a few businesses. I do well from it, and I'm proud of it. Why is it that people don't want to? I was actually chatting to Leslie Lyons about this in one of my other podcasts. I was saying, why is it in our industry, people will be like, "Oh, yeah, I've got a studio, but it doesn't make much money though. Like, I don't make much money from it," and it's like, well, that's a problem. Why doesn't it? Like, because you should be making money from it. Like, it's a business. The idea is that you make money from a business. But in our industry, we have this taboo around making money. I don't know what I've got this theory that it comes from a protection mechanism of their income, that they feel if they tell people, oh, I'm making all this money, I'm doing great because I've worked hard, that people will be like, well, I want a bit of that too, so I'm going to do what you've done. But no one can do what you've done because you did it, not them.
It is a bit of that, and it is also the fact that maybe a bit of superstition. You don't want to kind of jinx what you're doing, but also I think it's not. It's kind of again one of the nice things as well about our industry that we are very. It's a very supportive and feminine industry, and
Mm-hmm.
like overall, and I think the supportive side of it comes that you don't really want to boast or be like, because a lot of studios struggle, and
Yeah.
when I went on tour, like when I used to tour all the time, I would often be at studios where the studio owner would be saying things like, "Oh, and we had this event on the weekend, and it was to raise money for this thing, and then we did this, and all of this work, so much work that they would do, and all these free events that
Mm.
they'd put on for their students, and all this kind of thing."
Yeah.
And they'd be talking about how they're not sure how they're going to pay rent that month on the studio,
Right.
and I would be like, why? Like, and it's, I think, part of the female dominated side of the industry that women are really used to undervaluing their work, and
Right.
especially when that work is their time.
Hmm. So you
Women,
think it's a predominantly more of a, a female thing because they tend to do that a little bit more?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I can't be sure, but I do see a lot of, yeah, just it is really easy to undervalue your time as a woman because so much of
Uh-huh.
the work that you do is not unpaid anyway.
Right.
And then, especially when it's something that you care about and your students are your friends and all of that kind of thing. But look, your students should want to see you do well.
Right. And it's just it makes me really sad. Like you just said, they're putting all on these free events and stuff and they're doing all these things with their students. And I feel like the people that tend to be doing that are people that open the studio because they just love pole. They just love
Yes.
pole. Like, they don't care about the money. They're just doing it because they love pole. I'm like, no, you shouldn't open a studio like that. I don't feel like it's a good way to do it. I opened my studio because for me, I wanted to be able to leave my job. I wanted to be able to leave my job and
Mm,
work full time in pole.
yeah.
I didn't want to freaking be working that job and the studio together because I had to pay my bills. Absolutely not. So
Yeah.
I find it
Well,
really
studios are
weird.
just like a crossover of love and passion and, wanting to be able to turn this into your life, but then realizing that you're suddenly a slave to your pole studio and you're
Mm,
running at a loss and you don't really know how to turn it around because you're teaching so many classes and you're
right.
covering so many classes and there's hens parties on the weekend. You don't have time to do all the admin. You don't have time to look at your marketing strategy. You don't have time to analyze how your retention rates are going, all of that kind of stuff, because you're so caught up in like the floor needs vacuuming, I've got to wipe down the mirrors, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
So how important is it for you nowadays? Like, did you ever learn about like the importance of having like assistants and people working for your businesses and stuff? Like, did you learn that the hard way, or did you employ people almost straight away to help you with stuff like this?
Straight away, we employed a bookkeeper because Maddie and I are terrible at maths and numbers
Okay.
and remembering to do things on time. So we were like, we definitely need to get a bookkeeper. But yeah, in terms of learning to delegate, that was something we really struggled with for a long time. And even now, we struggle with. I think something that's very difficult when you love your studio is your life, and you and the studio are just kind of synonymous. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you've named the studio after yourself. And then Maddie and I found in the early days, whenever we went on holidays or if we took an evening off or anything like that, that class attendance would drop.
Right.
And so it just meant that if we were going somewhere, we just knew that, that the studio would take a hit. And over the years, we kind of have had to um, understand that the more focus you put on yourself at the studio, then the more your students are going to be focused on you. It's kind of what's more important is to like grow your studio. So focus on like training your instructors and making sure that the environment in the studio is nice so that people are coming not just for you as an individual, but for the studio. Because otherwise,
Yeah.
you'll never ever be able to take time off if you get an injury or if you get pregnant or if you have a nervous breakdown or anything like
Right.
that. You want your business to be able to continue without you. So that's something that we've kind of like worked on over the years. But even now, when it comes to delegating tasks, like I still get a little bit of that kind of my studio, it has to be how I want it done. And I have to try and like remind myself that it doesn't have to be done the way that I think it should be done. So long as it's done and it's done well, then that's okay.
Oh, hey, babes. Sorry to interrupt. It's just me, real quick. Do you ever have times where you're sat at home and you're thinking, oh, I wish my shoulder mount was stronger, or I wish I could shoulder mount, or I wish I could do an invert, or I wish I was able to do an Iron X. Well, let me help you. Come over and give my online strength and conditioning program a try. This is a program you can do from the comfort of your own home. All you need is a pole and a rocking attitude, and you'll be able to take class with me. We do 3 live classes every week, and you can catch up on hundreds of videos which are already on the site. So make sure you check out the Pole Destroyers. See you there. And you mentioned just a second ago about, if you need time to have a mental breakdown. Have you ever had a mental breakdown?
I've had many.
Are we talking like days out, or are we talking that like just like a stressful day, little sort of like mini mental breakdown? Like, have you ever been to a point where your mental health has really been severely affected to the point you've need to like go and see anyone or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I got postpartum anxiety with
Right.
after having Charlie, and it's actually something that I've been meaning to kind of like do a bit of a post on Instagram, because I think it's really helpful to other people when they see people going through it. I've had, I get anxiety, bouts of anxiety. I've had that for a long time, and
Hmm.
it really intensified after I had Charlie, and it was all kind of to do with her sleep. Um,
Yeah, I was just about
and
to ask, like, is it, so what is the anxiety? Is the anxiety, sorry, forgive my ignorance on this. When you said postpartum anxiety, I know obviously some people suffer with anxiety of losing the child when they're pregnant and stuff. I know people can suffer with
Oh,
that.
all
Is
through,
it
I had so much anxiety all through the pregnancy. So
right?
it started to, I didn't even, like I said, I've always been anxious. So I didn't really think too much of, when I say always been anxious, really it's since I opened my own business that I had anxiety. But
Right.
it really kind of, for me, it manifested in things. I didn't even have like enough of an understanding of what was happening to be able to name it. I just thought that maybe I was going a bit crazy. So, I'd just be, chilling out at home or whatever when I was pregnant, and suddenly I'd have like a terrible thought of something really bad happening. Or once Charlie was born, I'd be walking her down the street in the pram, and I'd see someone on the other side of the road, and I'd think, oh my God, he's going to come over, grab her out of the pram and throw her on the ground. And like really sudden and
Wow.
very like visual kind of
Yeah.
terrible thoughts.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know that. Anyway, they're called intrusive thoughts, and I
Yeah.
didn't know that that was a thing that new mums had. Um, but I had that a lot. And then the
Is it
other thing that
common?
happened was, yeah, yeah, it's
It
common.
is. Okay,
Um,
right.
but I stopped being. I would wake up at night if I thought I heard a noise, and then I would just lie awake, even if she was still asleep, and I would not be able to go back to sleep because I'd be waiting for her to wake up, and my heart would be thumping. I would, when I was trying to put her down for naps during the day, if I'd get her down for a nap, and then if there was like, a leaf blower, a guy with a leaf blower outside or something like that. I remember one time I finally got her down for a nap, and there was a guy with a leaf blower outside, and I ran outside in my pajamas and started abusing him in the street. And he was just like, I don't think he even
Whoa.
spoke English. He was just looking at me like I was crazy. But it was like that kind of overwhelming rage in those moments where I was like, how dare you? And eventually it was interfering with my sleep so much that I would not sleep at all at night. And then spend all day in bed, unable to do anything the next day, like crying and being like, it was just very, very difficult. And I didn't want to take any medication because I thought of that as a bad thing.
Hmm.
But once I went on anti-anxiety medication, just everything got so much easier.
Yeah. I don't
And I've
think
tried to come off it a couple of
I,
times, but
I think it's so important that you mention that as well, because I think it is such a taboo subject when we talk about taking medication for depression or anxiety. But if it's essential, it's essential. Like I don't think that but I was the same. I mean, I've been when we went through the pandemic and stuff, I went on antidepressants for a little bit
yes.
because it really I'm very much a creature of habit and routine. These are my studio days. These are my days off. Oh, that's okay. These are my studio days. These are my days off and stuff, so I
Mm.
am used to that routine. And when it all got thrown out my window, oh, I really did not take that well. I really struggled with it. So I totally appreciate that you have mentioned that, because I think for many people listening, there'll be lots of people who are taking meds who maybe are embarrassed to talk about it. And I think it's
Oh,
good
but
for
also
them to
like
know.
if you don't even realize that you need them, because I didn't think that I thought that I just had regular new mum stress. Like,
Right.
it's normal to be worried about like your baby's sleep, and it's normal to wake up and be like, is the baby breathing? All of that kind of stuff. But like if it's if you've got like a racing heart and you're having like you
Mm,
can't fall asleep, your mind is racing, you have a dry mouth, all of that kind of stuff, and you feel very stressed, and that kind of thing's not normal. Like it's normal to be like, oh, I wonder if my baby could sleep better, or oh no, they've woken up again. But the anxiety that came with all of that,
mm-hmm.
when it becomes overwhelming, and it's not just new mum stress. And I think that I thought that that's what it was, and I felt a bit like a failure. Like, why wasn't I coping? Um, but I'm not a failure. I'm doing a great job,
Of
and
course you are.
I just have a tendency towards being anxious, and being on the medication helps like so much.
What's it like? I think I know probably what the answer to this is, but what's it like running a business, managing your anxiety of being a mum and being a mum? I mean, I saw obviously for context, you posted a picture on your Insta stories. I did see this Insta story, of your laptop on the toilet. You were sat on the floor and she was in the bath. It must be an absolute nightmare. I mean, how do you cope with that?
Well, I've only really come back to work in terms of the admin side of the business in like the past couple of months, and that's because my mum's been able to take care of Charlie a couple of days a week. But
Nice.
also she's napping longer now, so she'll do 1.5 to 2 hour naps. So I just smash out as much as I can.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's challenging, but I'm feeling really good and motivated and excited to be back working on you know, I'm back working on PDA online. We've got some exciting things coming up for that, and
Hmm.
the franchise coming out and all of that kind of thing. Like there's lots of things that I'm really, as much as I love being at home with her all day, I also really value being able to use my brain again and being able to like have that kind of excited feel for working on new projects and
Yeah.
yeah, all of that. Where it's good.
So
But yeah, it's hard.
businesses,
It's
you
really
you have PDA was your first baby. Was that Crow's Nest your first one, or what was your first
hard.
one?
Bondi Junction. Yeah.
Right, okay. So Bondi was the first one. And then so then obviously how many studios do you have now in total?
We've got four, but we had had Bondi Junction, then we opened Redfern, and then we opened Crow's Nest, and then the building that we were in Redfern, they were going to do like a complete overhaul of the building, so we had to relocate. So we went to Alexandria, which is great. The Alexandria studio is great, but it annoys me because I'm like, we did 5 setups and fit outs, but we've only got 4 studios.
Right, that's so annoying.
Um,
What's
yeah, but
I went to a studio. So obviously, I remember Bondi. There was a studio where you walk up some stairs, you go down a elevator or up an
that's Crow's
elevator.
Nest.
That was Crow's
That's
Nest.
Crow's Nest.
Is that one still there?
Yes, that one's still
Okay,
there.
fine. So what's the one that you had to move out from?
Redfern.
Okay, I don't. I think that was maybe the one that I didn't
Redfern
go
was
to.
the one where we had like a little stage, and we had like the lights that said pole up the top, and then we had a pink room, and one room was
Yes. Hold on, hold on. That one, was there like a little? There was a disabled walkway, and then there was a stairs to the door, and then there was
yes,
the door, and your
yeah,
office was on the left.
that's right. Yeah.
Oh, that was actually the
So
first one I went to. Oh, I remember
you missed
that.
that one. Mm.
I was saying, I remember it's Leisha, wasn't it? She used to work in the office, in the little office to the left, so she used to be in there. Is she still working with you?
Leisha is still doing stuff for PDA online, doing tutorials and stuff. But she's got 2 babies now.
I
So
know.
I think, yeah,
Yeah, she's a busy mama.
she's a
Um,
busy mom.
so okay, so the studios were the first thing, and then next was it Pole Theatre next?
Yes, Pole
Then
Theatre was the first big. comp, and then we had Dance Filthy. And then, yeah, Pole Theatre just kind of, we didn't really intend for that to go overseas at all, but Stacey messaged us about it and wanted to bring it to the UK, and we said sure. And then other people just started asking. We were like, okay, let's do this. So
Let's do it. Yeah.
it's on hiatus at the moment because we kind of just wanted everything to get back to normal COVID wise. But now that everything seems to have kind of settled, we're gonna bring it back, which
Yeah,
would be good because
nice.
I think there's still a theatre in Greece somewhere that has a deposit from us.
Oh, really? Yeah, like
Yes.
100%. I think that was such a great idea. What a brilliant idea. So it was
Yeah.
okay, so then it was Dance Filthy, then it was Shimmy and Sparkle clothing, then it was so what was it? No
No
Sweat?
sweat.
And
And
then
we had,
yeah, then obviously PDA Online. How many businesses in total is it now? Six?
oh, I don't know.
A studio?
Well, I mean, they're
Pole
all kind
Theatre?
of, so we've got two separate companies. We've got Shimmy and Sparkle and we've got Pole Dance Academy. Um,
Oh,
and they're
okay.
kind of separated into the two. So PDA Online, anything that is like an online sale, like Shimmy and Sparkle and PDA Online, and No Sweat, that's all in Shimmy and Sparkle. And then Pole Dance Academy is just the studios.
Right, okay. What about Pole Theatre?
Pole Theatre's in Pole Dance Academy. Yeah.
Oh, so okay, I'm intrigued by that, more from a business point of view. Why didn't you separate it?
Well, honestly, because it just started off so small. Like it just
Right,
started off like a little competition that we ran here, and then it grew. And because our staff that work on like Leash, worked on pole theatre a lot, but also for Pole Dance Academy. So in terms of like pay and invoicing and all that kind of stuff, it's just easier to do it through the one company.
right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, probably when we pick it back up again, we'll probably structure it a bit differently
I only really
because we
asked
really were
that.
taken by surprise how quickly it grew.
Right, of course. It was, and the
Mm.
only reason I was asking it was because, like in the UK, for example, when you go over a certain amount of money, I think it's £80,000. When you go over that, and that's not profit, that's income, obviously. When you go
Mm.
over that, you have to register for VAT. So that's why I was like, oh, so I was like, so you're going to have to be paying VAT because of that business maybe
We don't
taking
have
you over.
VAT.
What? You don't have VAT?
No, we've got GST, but it's
Oh,
10%. Yeah.
I'm moving to Australia. I'm joking. Oh my God. Well, to be fair, like this, sorry, anyone who's listening to this is a bit boring. We have VAT. You get to choose either doing 20% and you can claim back VAT that you've paid, or you can go on to like a flat rate depending on the type of business you are, and it can be like 8%. So it depends on the type of business you've got and stuff. But yeah, sorry everyone, so boring.
I know,
But
no, the
yeah,
tax is a
I
nightmare.
know. I
The
just
thing about the VAT, and I guess, well, GST, it's probably the same with VAT, is that
yeah.
when you've had a really good quarter, then for us, it's called our BAS when we have to pay the GST. It's the business activity statement. It'll be really, really big. And you're like, oh, you get so annoyed how much tax you pay. And then you're like, oh, but it's because we had a good couple
Right.
of months. And then when you like get your bill and it's a lot lower, you're like, oh, great, don't have to pay much tax. And then you're like, oh, well, it's because we haven't earned much or whatever. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like a,
Of course, my accountant, so I had a period just when we started the online business and stuff where I had to pay loads of tax, and it's because I was so untax efficient about the way I went about it. And then by the time it was too late to change anything. So my accountant just said, right, we're going to change this, and we'll run it a bit better from now. She was like, but the thing is, she said, you got to be happy because, yeah, it's a lot of tax, but you're only going to pay tax on money you've made. And I was like, yeah, I've never
exactly,
thought of it like that before. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. But it's
you have
still,
to
it
make enough
does.
money to pay that, you know?
I've often thought about delegating because I'm the one that pays tax and pays like all that kind of stuff is my part of my role. I've often thought about delegating that because I just don't want to look at it. I get
I
so
feel for
upset
me,
when
it puts me in the most miserable mood. It puts me in such, and I just feel miserable for a few days, and I feel like I would like to delegate it for that pure reason. It just makes me
yeah,
miserable, and I'm just like, oh, I feel so shit about that.
yeah,
But
maybe
I
we
think
should.
whereas with a normal job, obviously the
I'll pay your
taxes.
tax and you can pay mine.
Yeah, sure. So I remember like when I used to work a normal job, obviously the pay that went into your bank account was all yours. You never had to be like,
Yes.
right, I have to save some of this for tax and stuff. Whereas now you see the number in your bank account and you're like, oh, I'm doing good. And then the tax bill comes through and you're like, ah, it's all going again. So
I've
yeah,
actually always been so paranoid about that I've always made sure that we have like a massive buffer in
same.
the bank account,
Yeah,
because I think all it would take is a couple of bad terms or a pandemic, and then you'd really be in trouble. So
yeah.
Maddie and I, when we first opened the studio, we didn't pay ourselves a wage for like the first 2 years or something, I think. Like we
Wow.
just earned money from our other job, and we kind of saved enough money to open the next studio. We didn't borrow money. We did it all from our savings, all the studio money.
Hmm.
And then again, we didn't pay ourselves very big salaries at all, like very, very low, so that we could grow that buffer.
Yeah.
And I always felt really paranoid doing that. And then when the pandemic happened, I was like, finally, I feel
Thank God.
vindicated.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I am
Because it was,
I'm my studio is a venue that is small, but it's inside a community centre and the room is small, but I'm not committed to being there. So if I'm not there or if we have to close down or whatever, I don't pay anything. And I've and there's been
that's good.
times over the last couple of years I thought, nah, come on, let's just go for it. Let's get a big place and just go big or go home.
Now it's
And
not
it
the
was at that point that I
same.
was like, oh my God, thank the Lord. I was like, thank God, because I felt so bad for these studios that were paying ridiculous rent and they weren't being let off the rent and stuff. Did you get any help with that, by the way, for your studios? Did you get any
There
relief in
was
your
some
rent?
help. There was some help. We were entitled to a 50% waiver of rent and then a 50% deferral. So we were still paying 50% rent for the time when we weren't using the studio, which
Uh-huh.
obviously hurt, but I don't know. What can you do?
Were you
It was
allowed to
really tough.
use it yourself to teach online from or anything?
It was. It wasn't really clear, because,
Right.
as with everywhere in the world, I think our government was just making it up as they went along. So some studios were doing it, some weren't. We did, but we would only have one person go into the studio at a time, and they had to like clean before and after. And I think it was a bit of overkill in hindsight, but no one really knew what was going on.
Right.
It was very
Yeah.
stressful. I cried and cried and cried and cried when we had to close our studio. I was just like, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I
we're
was
still here.
sad about it, but I think I was less sad purely because of the fact that I knew I had no commitment. So I was really lucky.
Yeah,
But oh God, I felt so bad for the people who were in that sort of boat. So, but you're so lucky,
yeah,
I guess, that you got help. Some studios in the UK got no help at all. Like it was really sad,
yeah,
and we lost a
yeah. In
couple.
Australia, they were really, the government had like a really good response.
So, random change of questioning. We've talked a lot about your businesses. You've had lots of successful businesses, and obviously, you've had a lot of success within the pole industry. Now, success always has to come with some sort of negative side. So, have you ever had any negative stuff come from what you do? Is there any downside to it?
Um, at first, when I first opened the studio, I definitely had a few people in my life kind of, when I told them that I was opening a pole studio and quitting corporate law, they obviously didn't think it was a good idea and tried to talk me out of it. And I think because I'd had a bit of a negative reaction from people who were quite close to me, I developed a bit of I guess like a chip on my shoulder, or a bit of paranoia, or like, I guess I was just a bit sensitive to
Mm-hmm.
that. And I definitely, in the early days, I definitely noticed there were more people who would make comments. Like, I remember one guy who I'd known when I was in high school. He said something like, I thought you were supposed to be smart. Like, what are you doing this for? And I was like, you just work for your dad.
Yeah.
But it did kind of, it bugged me. And also there was another, one of my teachers in high school who I always really looked up to. I found out from Chile, actually, that she'd been at the hairdresser with her or something like that and overheard her talking about one of her students who she thought was going to go on to do big things. And then she found out that I'd quit law to open a pole studio. And apparently Chile told her off.
Oh God.
I thought it was so
Of
funny.
course it would have been Chili. It couldn't have been anyone
Oh,
else. Of course it was
no,
Chili
no.
having her hair done at the time.
But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of kind of, it's not really like a chip on my shoulder. It's more just kind of like, it irritates me that people make those kind of face value judgments and think that
Hmm.
it's not, that you're not living, I don't know, living up to your potential or whatever if you decide to take a path that's a little bit different from the mainstream. But at the same time, I'm sure that I've made those kind of judgments or misunderstood people in their jobs or whatever. So, whatever,
Yeah,
doesn't really matter. I've also learned over the years that no matter what you do, there are going to be people who disapprove of it. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So you might
of
as well
course.
just live your
Yeah.
life and follow your bliss and don't worry about them.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time. It's one subject that really bugs me, so I talk about it with everybody. But like, you know, it doesn't matter what you do or what good intentions you have. No one gives a fuck. They literally will just find ways to be annoyed about it or to be angry about it, and it really pisses me off. I hate it so
Yeah.
much. Have ever had anyone try to cancel you? Have you ever had people sharing me like Shimmy has said this, Shimmy did this, and people are sharing on their stories, they're all trying to tag you?
Probably, probably, yeah, probably. I really kind of like watched in horror at that whole internet pylon on Lux ATL like a
Oh
couple of years
yeah,
ago.
what was that about? Was that about
I
apparently
don't
she?
even
Yeah, I can't
I don't
remember
even know what
that.
it was
Yeah, I stayed
about.
out of that. I was like, oh
Yes,
God.
I've always liked her, and I just thought, regardless if you'd had an experience that you didn't like or whatever the situation was, if some people attended her retreats and absolutely loved them, and I think there are a few people who didn't. It wasn't what they were expecting, but I
Yeah,
just think I do not understand the need to publicly massacre someone online and try to humiliate them and like go after their physical appearance, their relationships, the way they parent. Like, I watched that whole thing and it made me feel sick.
yeah.
Um, I just would never. I don't know. I didn't like it at all. And at that point, I just kind of stepped back from social media a bit. Like I still post a lot, but I don't.
You keep away from the controversy.
I keep away from the controversy because like I said, I have a bit of anxiety, and especially during the pandemic, just all of that stuff. Like it, I kind of, I just need to, for my own mental health, not get too involved in controversies. And I see them online, and sometimes I want to comment and say, like, oh, I think this or that, but then I'm just like,
Don't
don't
bother. And then
protect
and
your.
then and then you'll have people that will be like, it's funny. Could you remember the Tuesday topic on Polos where it was like, oh, one of the studios weren't paying this instructor, and you were like, oh, I need to just come on and let you all know because I've been tagged. It is not PDA, and but people had no reason to believe it was PDA, but people were tagging. Oh, I hope this. I hated that. That really wound me up. That people were like, oh, this better not be you, PDA, or this better not be you,
I
Sydney
know.
Pole, or people will be like, I bet
Yeah,
this is Shimmy and Maddie or whatever. I'm like, hold up, like. No, don't accuse anyone without any information. That's not cool. Like, but
but
that
also,
actually,
I mean, I
go on.
just like, of course, you pay your instructors, like, of course. At the same time, though, I don't know. I don't even know who the studio was or who the owner of the studio was, but I just think like it was towards the end of the pandemic. I don't know, like it was at a difficult time.
Mm,
And I think like if you don't know the full story of what this person's been going through themselves or what they've agreed with their instructors or what,
yeah.
I, I don't know. I just think
I think
like,
the difficulty with that particular situation is that there should be no real circumstance where you don't pay people. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't, it doesn't matter how
no, I
hard you're
agree.
struggling. Like, if I was really, really struggling, I'd just teach them all myself. I just wouldn't ask my teachers to teach. Do you know what I mean? So I think I'm really glad that she did get paid in the end, because the topic, I knew that if I posted the topic, it would get people talking, and then the studio owner would see it. And then when she saw it, she'd be
Mm.
like, I can sort the situation out. And it did. And the girl was like, I remember her messaging me afterwards and saying, I'm so glad I'd done it this way, because had I actually messaged her, I reckon I would have got
Mm.
kicked out the studio, because it just would have been like the not to do thing. But when it's like,
I
this is
ask
the
who it
thing.
was now.
Yeah, I mean, it's someone you know, but
Yeah.
and I don't hold anything against the person, because when you go through a really tough time like the pandemic, we make wrong decisions. You know, it's not to say that she did it out of spite, and she 100%,
Mm.
I would guess that she didn't. It's just one of those things, like we have to make decisions on how to run our businesses, and sometimes they're not the right decisions, and that's okay.
Mm.
And but sometimes it's very hard in
I
our
just, yeah,
industry.
I just know. I mean, I've been an instructor and I'm also a studio owner, and I know from talking to some of my friends who own studios in Sydney how tough they were doing it through. Like I said, we were very fortunate because of my paranoia about stockpiling enough of a buffer. Like we were okay. And I just watched so many of my instructors go, not only through, of my fellow studio owners go, not through only just like having to pay rent when they had no income, but other things as well, like landlords wanting to kick them out,
Right.
floods happening. Like it's just been the most unbelievable 2 years. So I don't think that it's okay to not pay your instructors, but I do have a lot of empathy for my fellow studio owners who a lot of them were like barely breaking even to start with,
Yeah.
probably because they've been doing too much,
Mm.
putting too much of their own passion and love into their projects rather than actually, taking a business mind to it. But yeah, I don't know. I just have a lot of empathy for everyone.
Oh, I think the
Not
instructor
because
did as well. Like, I think everyone does. I think you've got to have some empathy, obviously. Like, and I think that's why, even if it had got out who it was, um,
mm,
they would have been like, well, they are going through a hard time. And I think people can understand that mistakes may have been made in the heat of the moment, not
yeah,
knowing what to do, because we've never been through that before. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? But it's nice that people can use a platform like that to be able to say stuff that they want to be able to say anonymously, because
yeah.
if she
I mean,
were
a
to
lot
have
of the
posted
time
that
you get,
herself,
yeah,
it would
a
have been
lot
a
of the time
nightmare.
you get people getting really fired up in the comments, and but then I'm also often really reassured to read comments where people are like, oh, we should, you need to find out this or that. That there are actually a lot of rational people out there in the in the internet world, not
Mm,
just kind of like, I don't know. It's the kind of automatic leap towards outrage
right.
that stresses me out with the online situation, because obviously life is all shades of grey.
Yeah. I think that's an online thing though, don't you? I think it's just like
Yeah,
people on the
definitely.
internet, they instantly see red and they just go crazy. Whereas if you put
Yeah.
yourself in a situation face to face in that, yeah, you might see red, but you deal with it rationally, because obviously that's what you'd want to do, right? You wouldn't want to go
Mm,
crazy about it. But yeah, so
yeah.
okay, so you've never specifically had a time where you can remember that you've been cancelled or anything, that people have been like, oh, you didn't do anything that people just didn't like, or you've run an event that people were like, oh, Shimmy is like
Yeah, no,
overcharging or anything like that.
we've had complaints from Dance Filthy and Pole Theatre before, where people felt that they weren't sufficiently warned about the content of some of the shows.
What? Are
And
you serious?
yeah, yeah, quite a few. And often I agreed with them, but sometimes we don't actually know what the competitors are going to be doing um, until they do it, and then we're like, oh gosh, we're as shocked as you are. um, and there have been times when it's difficult because, as the organizer, obviously the buck stops with you, and you've got to be on top of as much as you can. But yeah, sometimes you don't necessarily understand that something might offend someone, or I kind of take the position that if someone's offended, then they're offended. You don't get to decide whether or not it was offensive if they feel offended.
Correct.
Um, at the same time, it's not always possible to understand every aspect of every and be across every single issue. And also on a practical level, on the day of the competition, you might be running around backstage when they're rehearsing, or they might not wear their costume until the actual show. And then you're like, oh, that's not really very appropriate or
Mm.
whatever. And yeah, if we're a big multi-million dollar industry, then you could have people who were just sitting there watching the rehearsals. You could hire, but it's pole is growing and getting more professional, and we all try really, really hard. Yeah, and sometimes things happen that you do get complaints and
Yeah.
feedback about, and you just have to kind of take it on board. And we kind of like constantly try and update, like we've got ethical guidelines for pole theatre, which probably need updating as well. But yeah, sometimes I think when people send complaints, they picture that there's a whole team
Mm-hmm.
working on stuff, but
Right.
it's me, Maddie, and we've got, well, at the moment we've got one full-time employee, and then we've got the reception team and the instructors and stuff. But yeah, before we had two full-timers. But yeah, so it's not a huge team. It's
Yeah.
not a big team at all.
And
So
how,
like,
like with pole theatre and stuff, obviously, as you know, like a lot of the subjects and the themes are subjective. Some people, I've been at pole theatres before where they've had to give trigger warnings for people just to give them the opportunity to leave if they wanted to, if it was on a certain subject.
yeah,
I'm intrigued to know how much responsibility people put onto you at events that aren't specifically run by you. For example, like if Stacey was to run one, I know there was one, I can't remember what country it was in, and it was I mean, now it would not fly at all because of everything that's happening, but that girl who did the nun who had a baby and she wanted to have an abortion kind of thing, do you remember that was like the big,
I was there for that one.
you were there for that? Oh my god, like, and I just remember the online outrage over that routine. And I mean, obviously it's so different when you talk about it now because of what's going on in the world, but obviously at the time,
Mm.
it was a bit of a tough one because of the way she'd gone about it, and it was supposed to be comedy, and she tried to make sure it was comedy, but it was still quite offensive. And how much of that comes back to you, even though it wasn't you who did it, it wasn't you who did, but people will be like, oh, Shimmy was there and she didn't stop the routine or whatever, because I've had that before. People have been
I
like,
would never stop. Yeah, I would never stop a routine, like unless it was, like racist or homophobic or like something that was really, really wrong. I mean, not really, really wrong, but like, something where it's it's difficult. I mean,
yeah,
we have our ethical guidelines. At the end of the day, we kind of do put the responsibility on the performer to take responsibility for their art.
yeah,
Um, with that particular performance, the funny thing was that when she first did it in the US, people in the audience were laughing, but when she did it in the finals in Europe, which really surprised me, I thought it would be the other way around. In
right,
Europe, the reception was different. Um, so, I mean, we know culturally things, things don't translate necessarily across cultures. Things that seem okay in Italy are not okay
I'm
in the
not,
US, and, you know,
yeah,
that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like we give people the opportunity, and we have rules and we have guidelines, and provided they fit within the rules and the guidelines, then ultimately the performer is the artist and they're responsible for their art.
yeah,
What is difficult is when we have those rules and guidelines, and a national organizer doesn't necessarily interpret the performance as a violation of those rules and guidelines, possibly because their English isn't, they don't understand it 100%, or possibly because for culture, like in their culture, it's not. And I'm going to give the example of the performer in Italy. It wasn't pole theatre; it was a different competition. It wouldn't have happened at pole theatre, but
oh, the girl who did
she
blackface,
performed. Yeah, she did Sister Act,
she did
and
Sister
yes, she
Act,
did
yeah,
blackface, and obviously shouldn't have happened. Um, a lot of people in Italy said it's not something we're aware of here.
yeah,
I don't really, I mean, I feel like knowing that blackface isn't okay is pretty, I thought it was pretty well known
into,
internationally, but
right, you think
Italy
that,
is a very kind of insular country. So it shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened at all. And it
No.
was real. I can't believe that nobody said you
I
shouldn't be doing this.
I remember seeing that and I felt really sorry for the girls, not because they'd made a mistake and like they'd said, like there was no, they were like, we did not want to offend people. She was mortified. I remember seeing her status and I felt a bit bad because I was a bit
Mm.
like, oh, this poor girl. And then even
Well,
on
no one
her
is in that
and
situation,
even
but you
on
can't
her
have
apology, people were going at her. People were going at her on her apology. I was like, God, like she's really trying her hardest here to apologize for the mistake. But the internet is ruthless. People aren't willing to accept an apology. It's not enough for people. It's
yeah.
like your apology will never be enough for people, and it's really difficult. But like you said, I more just wanted to know whether does any of that come back on you? Like, do you get any hate because of
It
it?
has. Yeah, we've got a like a the procedure is if there's an issue or complaint, they go to the national organizer, and if it can't be resolved, then it comes through to us, and we have a look at it as well.
Okay.
To be honest, the level of scrutiny and the unwillingness to kind of accept, as you say, apologies, or to when you want to say, oh, something didn't go the way we wanted it to, the outrage that gets generated on the internet, it has really made me, I guess, less enthusiastic for a lot of work goes into events, like into putting on big whole
Mm-hmm.
events. It's a lot of work. It's quite often like it's not thankless because people do really appreciate it, but people are faster to get angry than they are to you. It's the complaints emails that come first. And a lot of the time
Right.
people do get really angry, and it's a little bit it can be demotivating and a bit disheartening because you put so much work into it for not
Yeah.
much money at all. They cost so much to put on, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just mainly because of the trust and like it's very very difficult to put on a really really big event. Um,
Yeah.
but on the flip side, like a lot of people get a lot out of them. There's been, especially in Europe, so many touring pole performers' careers that have been launched through pole theatre. And, I remember seeing them as
Yeah.
like little baby performers, and now they're amazing. And that makes me feel really happy that we were able to kind of give them a platform and give them an opportunity to spread their wings. So I love the events, I love putting them on, but yeah, it's not good for anxiety. It's
Stressful.
not good for anxiety.
It's really not. Well, listen, we're coming up to time, so I don't want to keep you too long because I know you are on holiday. But I just think everything that you're doing is amazing, and I think you're just such a super woman doing all of this whilst trying to look after a child as well. Well, two children if we include George, I guess. So having to look after the two of them, and then obviously trying to manage your business. I assume you have to look after Maddie as well, because Maddie seems like the child out of the two of you. Whenever I'm watching the videos, she seems like definitely the more immature one out of the two of you. But yeah, so you're just absolutely killing it. So thank you so much for coming and speaking to me. I would love to talk to you again at some point soon. But yeah,
Thank you
until
for
then,
having me.
thank you so much for coming
Wait,
on, Shim.
wasn't there a special request question from one of your followers?
A special request?
You sent it to me via Instagram messages.
Which one was it? I can't remember.
I'm not going to say, it was too embarrassing. You can go back over them. I don't want
No,
to answer it
no,
anyway.
do not go. Hold on. No, I need to find out what it was. That was a special request message. Hold on. Who was it? Oh, was it about George?
No,
It, wa- what the hell? I'm trying to think of what you're talking about.
nope, too
Um,
late. You forgot.
you what? Sorry.
No, no, it's all
Oh,
good.
hold on. Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, hold on. I can't even talk about that on there. What a weird question.
No,
Okay, for
don't.
anyone who's
I just thought that was
for
so
anyone
funny.
wondering, I wrote a post saying, "Oh, everyone, like, what do you want? Who do you want me to speak to?" And someone was like, "Oh, I want you to talk to." Basically, they said, "I want you to talk to Michelle about like
I
periods
know
and
you
stuff." And I
pulled
was
out
like,
your period.
"Yeah, like hold on." I was like, What a random thing! Like, just of all things. I mean, don't get me wrong. It could be actually quite a cool subject to talk about it to someone, but it was the way she specifically was like, "I want Michelle Shimmy talking about pole dancing on your period."
Lonely when you're
I was like,
on.
"Wow, okay." So one interesting
I feel
one.
like pretty much
Maybe we'll
every
save that
single
for
pole
next
dance.
time.
Yes, very funny.
But
Internet's
yeah,
crazy.
thank you so much, Shim, and enjoy the rest of your holidays. Send my love to
I
George, that
will.
sexy, sexy man, and I will
I
see
will.
you. I hope to actually see you at some point soon. I hope I'll get to see you in Europe soon.
God, the thought of taking Charlie on a plane just like makes me crazy.
There'd just be like pasta bolognese just everywhere. People sat next to you would just be covered in food.
Just so mad.
Thanks so much, Shim, and see you again soon.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're not and you're on Spotify or on iTunes, make sure you subscribe and catch up on all the upcoming podcasts that are coming soon. See you again.
That was all the tea that you can get this week. Join me next time right here. It's the Weekly Tea.